Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. In today's lesson, we will be doing harful ba. But before we do that, I wanted to introduce you guys to some of the sizing symbols, I guess, so that you are familiar with them and by what they mean when we start doing the letters and I use them. So the first thing you all know about and you're familiar with, let me just draw a line here, is the nukta. You are all familiar with the nukta, and we've talked about it before. It is used as a sizing tool. Another thing that's used that means the same thing as a nukta is a circle. When we draw the circle, like that, it references a nukta. And if you notice, this circle is the size of a nukta. I can draw a nukta within the circle, and that is how it is representative of the nukta, or the dot. Another symbol used for sizing is this right here. And that references half a nukta. So when that is used, that is half a nukta's sizing. Be familiar with these terminologies, as we will be using them when it comes to sizing letters. One last thing I would like to notify that is also used a little less commonly, but usually to explain or illustrate a small gap or a spacing, is just a little filled spot like that. Typically, that or even just a little circle like that indicates a gap, such as with harf al-alif, as we explained before, there's a spacing because it's leaning towards the left. So sometimes that is used in illustration. Furthermore, outside of the sizing symbols that are used, things such as dashed lines, vertically or horizontally, are also used to kind of make splits between parts of the letter that are going down and up, or vice versa. So now with that in mind, let's move on to harful ba. So for harful ba, it has a little different of a shape than harful alif because it is curved, thus making it more difficult to master the letter. The best way to master the letter is by practicing tracing. Tracing will be your best friend when it comes to mastering harful ba. If you try to practice without tracing, you might learn the wrong strokes for the letter, making it more difficult to correct in the future. So make sure you are practicing using the tracings that I sent you. And let's begin with the first shape of harful ba. Bismillah. Remember to always have the curvature on the right angle before you begin. You begin with a stroke upwards from the line. Then with a downwards stroke, and then with a curve upwards in the end, where it touches the line around 2/3 into the letter. And you would notice that if this point right here continues on to point in that direction, which is the angle of the pen that you hold on, and the same thing with this, where if I am going into it as well, these two are parallel to each other. So they're both pointing in the same direction. The other point you need to know is that حرف الباء width-wise, and this is where the sizing comes in, is 3 نقطas high. But before I write that, I wanted to point out that this edge here is above the beginning edge. So it ends above it by a little bit, not by too much. And let me begin by writing the 1, 2, 3 نقطas. And you see that's the width of حرف الباء. That is for the first shape of حرف الباء. Now moving on to the second shape of حرف الباء that I will explain in a moment. This is the general shape of حرف الباء, of the other shape of حرف الباء. However, this is wrong, and I want to point out why it's wrong. You notice that over here it is flat along the line, and that is not what you want with حرف الباء. You notice here in the first one that there's a little gap above the line in the beginning, and then touches the line about 2/3 of the way down. Over here it touches the line super early, and that is incorrect. You want it to be similar to that aspect. So let's rewrite the other form of حرف الباء and move with it. Bismillah. First part is like الرقم واحد, or number 1 in Arabic. The other aspect is like the body. As follows. And you can tell the slight difference between both of these, as if I draw a line at the bottom of this like that, you'll notice that it is not flat against the line. There is that little gap, and that is how it should be. The other thing I want you guys to notice is that the tip here is aligned with the base tip of the first aspect of حرف الباء. And then the length of this, as with the first shape, is also 3 نقطas. Okay? Now, I also want to explain that this right here, the first part, is نقطة ونصف, 1 نقطة and a half. Okay? And instead of denoting it with a نقطة, the normal نقطة, I'm going to denote it with a circle just to get you guys accustomed to that. These are my boundary lines. حرف الباء is about 1 نقطة up, like above the line. It goes about up to 1 نقطة above the line. So now that I explained where this tail ending is and where this tail ending is, let me explain where the 2 نقطas for حرف التاء and the 3 نقطas for حرف الثاء will be. So in رقعة, 1 نقطة looks like this. 2 نقطas looks like this, where this is actually a نقطة and a half long. That is 2 نقطas. Additionally, it is not flat. Or I apologize that I made that a little too flat. Let me redo that. That is 2 نقطas, and it is not flat. It is angled upwards. And as I said, it is a نقطة and a half. Okay. The last portion, which is for حرف الثاء, looks as following. Some people do it up to down, some people do down to up. I'm gonna do it from up to down in this situation. Now, this portion of it, I'm gonna rotate a little bit, is 1 نقطة wide, and this portion of it Some explain it as being 2 nuktas, and some explain it as being a nukta and a half, but I'm gonna say it's 2 nuktas for now. Okay, that is the downward portion or upward portion, and this is the second portion, nukta, and then these are 2 nuktas. Now that we know how these 2 shapes look like, or these 3 shapes, I guess, now we have to know the positioning on harf al-ba. So for the first nukta, just 1 nukta for harf al-ba, you want to place it 1 nukta below the letter. So imagine there's a nukta there. You want to place your nukta down here. For the other 2, harf al-ta'i and harf al-tha, you want to place those in the following position. Imagine half a nukta above here. And same thing above the other line over here. Imagine half a nukta up here. Once you have that half nukta, you want to draw another imaginary line in your head. And then that will be the base of your ta or your tha. So in the case of a ta, you go over here as following. In the case of a tha, you also start there and you go up, or you go up and you end at this point in the line. So that is for the placement of a tha and a ta on the base of al-ba. Those are the 2 shapes. Study them, practice them. You need to remember these proportions and these sizes later on. So ensure you are taking proper notes. Ensure you are studying these sizes, as they will be very relevant in the future when you start forming words, when you start practicing. You want to size your own words and you want to size your own letters, and that is how you self-grade. So if you notice something is off, if you notice your writing is weird, it's probably because your proportions or your strokes are off. And this is where studying those proportions, studying those shapes will make a big difference. For instance, this ba seems to be nice and correct, but it is incorrect because it is not above the line as seen. So things like that you might not notice if you don't study the letter properly. And so when you come to doing your portraits, when you come to doing your works, you're going to notice something is off, something doesn't look too nice, and you're unsure where it is. Study this, practice this using the tracing, and I will see you inshallah in another lesson. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.